Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta and Hahnemühle PhotoRag are the two papers that I'll be briefly discussing in this video. The last week of voting, folks, feel free to vote for my photo, shortlisted, link in the description below. Thank you very much. These are the two papers that I've been printing my photography on. The paper choice is dependent on the photo's characteristics, and we'll be touching on those specific characteristics in this video. Now, for a brief disclaimer, I don't do my own photo printing. I send my digital files to a professional printer, but I do choose the paper that I print these photos on. And the two papers that I'll be primarily discussing, as I just mentioned, are Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta, which can be considered the glossy of the two papers, and Hahnemühle PhotoRag, which is the matte of our two photo papers. Now, for reference, I guess you could call this normal copy paper, which has a weight of 80 GSM, 80 grams per square meter. Photos that you print at the pharmacy, like when you go to the pharmacy and you put it in the machine, the photos that come out, those are generally around 270 GSM. And for further reference, this random silk paper in my magazine is 130 GSM, which feels fairly more than standard, and the cover of the zine, also a silk finish paper, is 300 GSM. The professional printing papers that we'll be discussing both weigh in more than 300 GSM, significantly heavier than standard copy paper. They are both acid-free, making them good at not aging, and they are museum rated due to the longevity potential of the paper, which should maintain its quality for decades if printed with the correct ink and treated with care. Now, the first paper we're discussing, Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta, an unglazed 325 GSM paper with a gloss inkjet coating, which promotes lovely print results with a pretty much perfect reproduction of color and detail. In particular, the blacks are deep, and this helps with maintaining the striking contrast that you edited into your photos. And with referring to how deep your blacks present in your print is referred to as the D max, and if I'm not mistaken, one can say that this paper preserves a high D max. Furthermore, Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta is also described as being a bright white paper, which helps in maintaining that contrast that I was just referring to. And if you edited your images in a manner that preserves your dynamic range, that will show up on this paper because of the paper's ability to keep a deep black and a bright white. With my very limited experience with photographic printing, I'm under the impression that some papers require ultraviolet light to help bring out the white in the photo print, but apparently this is not needed with Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta, which also is a paper that does not contain brightening agents. The brightening agents, I believe, are called OWA and OBA, and these, when present in the paper composition, help with a perceived brightness of the paper whites, but they do also contribute to the aging of the paper. And because this paper doesn't contain those brightening agents, it is considered to be well resistant to aging. Now, with regard to the detail, the combination of the paper's texture and its inkjet coating allow for the appropriate ink to seep into that texture, which prevents that ink from seeping outwards. And this is also what helps maintain the fine detail and the sharpness in your photo prints. This FineArt Baryta paper is ideal for images such as my rooster, which features a black background and intense pops of color contrast and detail. Another good example of which photos this paper would be ideal for are those two dramatic portraits. The same portrait, one in color and one in black and white, but both containing pops in contrast. Now, moving on to Hahnemühle PhotoRag, the matte of these two papers. This is a cotton-based paper, and my photos are printed on the 308 GSM of this paper. The reproduction quality of this paper is excellent, but one needs to understand the visual properties associated with the cotton paper that features a matte inkjet coating. Your blacks, though they will be deep, they will not be as silky as with a gloss paper. Okay, while I have these thoughts fresh in my head, I am trying to figure out why I prefer this with the FineArt Baryta, which is glossy, and this is a person or portrait, self-portrait. And then here's one PhotoRag, also a person, and similar to this one over here, we have these two over here, which are also on PhotoRag, not FineArt Baryta, so these are less glossy. Having inspected these, this PhotoRag versus this FineArt Baryta, and why I believe, or why I feel FineArt Baryta works better for this type of an image, is because we have areas that pop in terms of tone. We have that, we have that, we have that. So that's especially with the color, you have that pop. In the black and white as well, you do have that pop, These are not hot spots, these are not blown out highlights, but they are popped. The highlights really do stand out compared to the rest. And that works well with the FineArt Baryta Hahnemühle because there is a slight gloss that helps assist these areas of pop, especially in the color. Whereas over here, the photo rag, those pops, these areas are supposed to have a bit of a greater pop, and the matte does not allow for that pop to shine. Now with the photo rag, we don't really have an area that should be popping with this beautiful portrait. We do have some areas over here of, you know, more prominent highlight on Eden's forehead, but it's not necessary to make the photo stand out. What makes the photo stand out is this entire portrait, the skin tones, and they're nicely complemented by her mom's clothing in the background that are a nice color, purple, her skin behind her with this little bit of, is that crimson or burgundy? And this works beautifully in photo rag because you don't have any areas that need to really pop out like you have over here and over here. Very soft light, you've got skin tones, gorgeous freckles. Photo rag is perfect for this color portrait. It's not perfect for this color portrait, nor is it perfect for this black and white portrait, because we want more of a dramatic pop, whereas over here, no pop is needed. There will be more of a velvet aesthetic, which will work well for specific types of photos, in my opinion. I think this paper will work particularly well for photos whose wow factor is not necessarily that contrast pop. The same acid-free and lignin-free features as the previous FineArt Baryta paper exist for this matte paper, so they meet the same requirements for age resistance. And the interesting structure of this paper makes it a fairly versatile paper for fine art printing, but you do need to understand which images will suit best. And my best non-professional way of describing this paper in terms of black and white photo printing is that I think it is probably the ideal paper on which to print your photos captured on Ilford Delta 400 film. If you have an image that carries a balanced array of tonal values in black and white, in other words, if you have a well-balanced grayscale image, this may just be the ideal paper for your photographic printing. Now we've got an instance here where we have used photo rag, a matte paper, on an image, a portrait that does actually contain a bunch of highlight pops. They're not overexposed. The brightest part here is somewhere over here and over there, but they're not overexposed. These are controlled highlights, but they don't pop in certain locations. It's kind of scattered throughout. And with some of our deep shadows over here, this over here is the deepest part, and down there is the deepest part. The rest is just proper gradients of gray. But choosing a matte paper to print this on has allowed for a balance in overall tone of the image. I do feel that if this had been printed on a more glossy paper, such as FineArt Baryta, I think the overall balance might be lost because you'll end up with more shiny glows on the darker areas that aren't true blacks. And they're the only true blacks in this image, I believe, over there and over there. Everything else is a shade of gray with some almost white zones. So the photo rag produced a balanced feel to this grayscale image. Two very different types of images work very well with photo rag, a more matted feel paper. Like I mentioned before, why I believe that this works well is because we've got no popping areas, we've got a bunch of color, we have not too much black taking up the entire image, the entire proportion of the image. We've got some over here, some over there, whereas with this one we have a large proportion of black background in the image, and having so much of that being black on a matte feel paper, it's almost like you're flattening the image just by choosing this type of paper. Whereas the flatness effect on this type of an image helps create a balance. This print of Julia totally reminds me of my photos captured with an old medium format camera on Ilford Delta 400, correctly exposed of course. I do think that the same print on a gloss paper would result in too many inappropriate glares on the darker spots, which could potentially result in a loss in overall tonal balance of the image. But this paper is not only for black and white or grayscale photo printing. This photo of Eden the ballerina is a photo beautifully balanced in tone, and color, which features no pops in color or contrast, and I do not think that a gloss paper would suit here. I believe that the details behind Eden, her mom's clothing, and this part of her mom's arm would potentially be lost to reflective glare. The color and the tone balance make this image perfect for a velvet aesthetic, and you can see the blacks here are beautifully preserved and provide that overall balance in the image as a whole. To round off, most of my photos feature pops in color and pops in contrast, therefore making Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta my general paper of choice for most of my photo printing. Now when we compare this grayscale image, which is more of a black and white image, to this grayscale image here, there is a lot more dark shadows almost. There's a lot more black points in this, which is why I think FineArt Baryta was better suited for this, because if I'd used PhotoRag, so a more matted look, I think it would have resulted in this image being flatter or appearing flatter, and then these specks of highlights over here wouldn't be as dramatic as I would have wanted them to be. So FineArt Baryta was the right choice for this one, in my opinion. And even though this is a grayscale or black and white image, and this one is as well, the PhotoRag helped maintain that balance. Whereas over here, the balance isn't necessary because we have spots that we want to stand out in the image. It is the paper of choice for the following photos. Photos featuring pops in contrast, such as my self-portrait sessions or portrait sessions in general. The water buffalo, the carabao, which features a fair tonal range, but a significantly large proportion of black in the background. Photos in pops with color, such as my rooster facing itself, and also Man in the Hat, which, if it had been selected for print in black and white, I do believe it would have been better suited for Hahnemühle PhotoRag. But I think the color pop makes it appropriate for FineArt Baryta. Is Hahnemühle FineArt Baryta a perfect paper? No. It's a touch heavy on the gloss, but if you're taking the time and the effort and the money to get to the point of printing like this, you're probably also going to put some thought into where and how you'll display this. So I do think it is an acceptable paper, more than acceptable. And just a little bonus checkout of the photo ending off. This is a special print. It is a test print of Sunset BMX, which has been shortlisted for the British Photography Awards. I think I will need to find a completely different paper to reduce the gloss glare, and if I end up finding the right paper, I will let you know. If I'm not mistaken, there is a PhotoRag Baryta which might make for an interesting print of this particular photo, but time will tell, we'll see, and I will keep you posted on when I find the right paper for this photo. And if you happen to have any recommendations, please do let me know in the comments below. And let's leave it at that, folks. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you got something from this video. If you did, and if you enjoyed the images, please give the like button a little tickle, or subscribe for more videos. Hitting those buttons will help get my channel out there. Don't forget to keep taking photos, keep making videos, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.